Hello and welcome to episode 2 in the ZBrush training series brought to you by 3dbuzz.com. I'm Buzz.
I'm Zach.
Zach, our magical host of this training series, will do some real-world work this time around.
Oh, instead of just goofing off and showing the interface?
That's right. It's time to put ZBrush to the test.
Okay.
Let's make something.
What are you going to make?
Well, instead of painting, because you did a little bit of painting when we took the trip around the user interface in episode 1.
Sure.
This time around, let's work with some 3D stuff. I want to see some sculpting this time.
Okay.
I want you to actually sculpt out a head.
All right. I can do that.
Okay, well, let's do it then.
All right, well, let's jump right in. I'm going to start off with a base 3D object.
Okay.
When you sculpt, you need something to work from. So I'm going to go under Tool, and we're going to bring in the Sphere 3D object.
Okay.
Now, here's just a quick thing. I'm just going to show you how to create one of these. Boom.
Okay.
There's a sphere. That's what we're going to base off of. But
So this is what we're going to sculpt and mold into a head.
But I got to kind of undo this. And the reason is I want to show you guys how to navigate a 3D object in your document.
Oh, and navigating with a sphere would be kind of pointless.
It's like rotating a cue ball around. You can't tell what's going on.
Tell.
So
Okay.
Let's grab something a little more interesting. I like these things. They're just cool.
They're deadly.
I want one.
Okay.
So here we go. We just dragged in a 3D object. You just click and drag, no problem. As soon as you bring this in, you do have the ability to move it. So you get like this little manipulator here, which you can drag around if you want to move. You can scale it, and you can rotate it. Now, you'll notice it's disappearing back through the clipping plane. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal as far as we're concerned.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and just get out of here. We'll undo this. We want him to basically go away. Let's go back to draw mode and just hit Control-Z.
Okay.
Now, let's drag out another one. The way that we're going to be using to actually navigate this while we work on it is by going into Edit mode, which you can click on the Edit Object icon, or you can hit T for the hotkey. Now, while you're in edit mode, you can also rotate around, and you'll notice that we do not go back through the clipping plane.
Oh, we don't. I see.
Now, the way that I'm doing this is I've put my mouse outside of the object. It's important that you remember we are not on the object.
So before you were in that manipulator
Yeah.
thing, now you're just outside the object, click and drag it.
Yep.
And it's a free-form type rotation.
Yeah, we can go in kind of any direction we want. So if I go from down here, we're spinning like so.
Yeah, but won't that make it kind of challenging if you need to rotate it to, like to snap it to...
Like a precise rotation?
Yeah.
Hold down the Shift key while you're out here. You just click, drag, and at any point while you're rotating, hold down Shift and pow.
Ooh, nice.
You get a precise rotation. Now, this is not set to any specific preset, like down a given axis. It's just going to rotate to the nearest major point.
Well, that's going to make it uniform on both sides, if you will.
Boom, there you go.
So that's uniform both sides?
Yeah, I get it close to side, hold down Shift, and it just pops
And if you take it out where it's straight up and down, again, if you think about it, split it right down the center. It's uniform on both sides. Okay, I see how that works. Cool.
So that's an easy one. You'll be using that a lot. Now, another one that you'll need to use is to pan this object around. Now, this is where things can get a little bit tricky if you're not paying a whole lot of attention. You have to remember that ZBrush is not a 3D application.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, this is still a tool and not a true 3D object, even though we're kind of moving it around as if it were one.
Gotcha.
Now, why is that important to us? Well, a document can be navigated using the navigation buttons on this side of the interface, over on the right-hand side.
Okay.
We can scroll the document. We can zoom the document. We can send it back to its actual zoom. We can see an anti-aliased half-size version if we just want to see it kind of looking pretty, so to speak. But that's not going to actually help us while we're sculpting.
Okay.
Reason being is that we can't necessarily move this guy around without holding down the Alt key and dragging. And now what we're doing is we're moving this 3D object around inside of our document.
Gotcha.
So we can rotate, we can move. And here's another one that's a little bit tricky. Let's say we need to quote-unquote zoom.
Okay.
You can't. You can't actually zoom because
you're scaling it, I take it?
Yeah, your camera is locked. What you can do is you can scale your object up and down.
And you don't have a camera. It's just a canvas.
Well, your eyes. I mean, I keep saying camera because I'm so used to coming from a 3D background. But we can't actually zoom. What we can do is scale the object up and down. And the way I'm doing that is by holding down the Alt key as if I was going to try to pan.
Okay.
But while I'm panning, let go of the Alt key. And as you drag now, you're scaling up and down.
Okay.
It takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay, so there's a quick look at navigating. It's everything you really need to know to navigate around. Now, notice everything I did, I had clicked off the surface of the object.
Mm-hmm.
If I click on the surface, we start sculpting.
Whoa.
So that's just left dragging.
So you're going to make a sphere, do that, turn that into a head.
Exactly.
So now you can drag off and rotate around.
Yep. And you can see how I've
rock on.
melted the thing and all sorts of stuff like that. So now let's go ahead and get rid of our tool here. I'm going to get out of edit mode.
Okay.
This object now just became a bunch of pixels.
Right.
Let's just go ahead and hit Control-Z.
Gotcha.
All right, so with that understood, also check this out. Take a close look at my tool. Now, your video may be really small, but you'll notice that no longer looks like a gear. Mm-hmm. It's our melted version of the gear. So at any point, I could actually recreate that if I wanted to.
Very cool.
Right from where I left off. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a sphere. And let's drag this in. Now, if you look really closely on your monitor, if you're following along with me, you're going to notice that the pole of the sphere is pointed straight at you.
Gotcha.
If you're watching this on a smaller video, you probably don't even notice that.
Right.
What I'm going to do is go into edit mode, and I'll drag out here on the right-hand side, and I'm carefully rotating the pole up, and I'm holding down the Shift key to get us rotated to an exact.
So our poles are now, that's sitting.
Top and the bottom.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So once I've done that, I can go ahead and start sculpting, but I don't want to sculpt both halves of the head. I want to do half the work and make the other half appear automatically.
Makes sense.
I can do that by tapping the X key, and what this is going to do is make a copy of my brush. Anything I do on one side will be copied across the X-axis onto the other side. If you want to, you can also hit Y, and you can copy across Y, and you can hit Z and copy across Z. So you can get all sorts of interesting effects that way.
Nice.
Now let me go ahead and undo that. We'll go ahead and hit Z to turn that off. We'll hit Y to turn that off. And it's time to finally start sculpting. One last thing before I really start getting into this. I am going to be sculpting using a Wacom tablet. Okay. That means there's a little bit of pressure sensitivity involved. If you're trying to follow my example stroke for stroke as I go through this, and you notice that your mouse just isn't doing exactly what I'm doing, that's why.
Stroke for stroke. Let me also remind you guys that there is some artistic skill that is required in doing this.
Sure.
You're not going to be able to watch exactly where his mouse goes and reproduce the exact thing. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just the way things go.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start off. Take a look at some of the sculpting commands before we actually start making our head.
Okay.
So if I was to just click and draw, you'll notice what we're doing right now is we're pulling out away from the surface.
Cool.
Like so. Now that's interesting, but why are we doing that? Do you remember our tools that we set up in the first episode? Mm-hmm. We had Z-add and Z-subtract. Z-add is going to pull out from the surface. Z-subtract is going to push inward.
Nice.
So therein lies the nature of sculpting right there.
Sure.
You also have Z intensity, which is how far you want to push and pull. I'll be switching between those a lot. Now, I like to use the right mouse button to change these. Sometimes I'll go up there. I don't really have a set way. So if you see me do either one, that's why. We're going to start off with Z sub, and with a very low intensity, I'm going to start to carve in some eye sockets. Now, another note for those of you who are completely new to this, it is a good idea to use very, very light strokes with a low intensity and build your strokes up on top of each other. Don't go in and be like, well, let's make some eye sockets. I mean, we've started making Jack Skellington now.
Yes, we have.
Which is cool, but that's not the direction we're going. So, again, just, go gently, build things up slowly. So now, there's really all I really need to start with some eye sockets. Okay. And we're going to have to pull some eyes back out of that a little bit later, but we'll worry about that in a bit. So let's go back to add. And I'll pull out some cheekbones, maybe make my brush a little bit bigger. I just hit the S key to do that. So pull out some cheekbones. We can go ahead and start to pull out a nasal area. Let's make the brush smaller again. I'll just pull down the bridge of the nose a little bit. And size back up. Follow around the chin. Another thing you're going to have to keep in mind, this is a lot like sculpting with clay. Kind of like a digital clay surface where you almost have an infinite supply of clay, but also like sculpting in clay, it's going to look pretty bad when you first get started. And you're going to need to kind of be patient with yourself. Well, let's drag out a little bit of a chin.
A little bit.
Well, see, here's the cool
Jay
thing.
Leno, man.
Well, we've talked about pushing and pulling. Another very important thing is you can hold down the Shift key, and you'll notice that my brush turns blue.
Right.
And now as I drag, I'm smoothing back out.
Ah, cool.
And that's something you're going to be doing a lot. And actually, it's my favorite method of sculpting where I'll over-exaggerate something and then smooth it back down.
Gotcha.
So now I can, pull these cheekbones out a little more. In fact, I'm going to adjust my focal shift a little bit to make it just a little bit bigger. There you go. We can pull that out and then smooth it back down. And I do a lot of back and forth like that. So we can smooth our jaw in a little bit. Let's maybe go to Z sub. And there's one thing I do really want to get done, and that is to bring in the sides of the head, because, a head shouldn't be spherically shaped.
Nice, giant, round, I don't know, pumpkin.
It looks like a space ball.
Good movie.
And that's a little bit far, so we'll smooth a little bit, and then we'll start to pull that back out a little bit. And again, sculpting is an intuitive process. It's not a mechanical, like you can't just say, here, now do this exactly and do that. You're going to have to kind of feel your model and do what feels right to you. Like not make a head that's this lumpy. Let me zoom out just a little bit. And I notice I fall right into saying the word zoom, which I said earlier we're not doing.
In essence, all he did was scaled it down some.
Yeah. And again, we're just doing some back and forth, adding in some volume to the head, and then smooth it back down. That forehead kind of pokes up a little bit, so we'll get some volume back here at the back of the head. Get this back in. And laid over on the side.
And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, it may get just a bit quiet while Zach's just doing his thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's kind of the way it's going to be when you're sculpting. Usually I have music turned on, but we don't want to violate any copyright laws.
No, and you definitely don't want me singing, so...
Yeah, so we're just going to stay quiet. So
exactly.
Let's pull out some eyebrows. I could pull the cheekbones out a little bit further. Let's take a look at the jawline. I mean, we really kind of need to come out quite a bit further here. So bring the mouth out as well. And smooth back out. Let's worry a little bit more about the nose.
So really, you're just jumping back and forth. Whoa, that's a nose, all right.
Yeah, it is.
Doing just a couple different operations you're switching back and forth between.
Yeah, I do a lot of, really, I pull probably more than I push in.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just smooth it back down.
Pulled and smooth.
And that's going to be the nature of my workflow. But of course, while you're doing this, feel free to experiment. And if you have a way that you like to work that's a little bit different, but works better for you, well, good, use it. Don't think that I have all the answers. I wish I did. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because we could get rich. Because you'd have all the answers.
Oh, 42.
The ultimate answer.
There you go. So, this is coming along. Maybe kind of take a little bit of that nose out.
Yes, a scary nose.
Give him a little bit of a nose job. Let's pull him back over here. And some of that nose I won't be able to clean up until I get a little more detail in place. But we can get a start. I mean, that's probably going to be functional for now. Let's go into subtraction, kind of push back in that upper lip a little bit. Let's go ahead and pull in a neck because we can start really kind of controlling the look of the entire head from there.
Okay.
Make my brush nice and huge. And I try never to go too high with the Z intensity, but you got to have some here.
Right.
And you'll notice pulling out the neck is pretty easy. Actually, it's a little bit too much. It's going to need to be wider here along this side. And we'll start smoothing a little bit. Smooth down there across the bottom. Now I'm going to take my brush and make it smaller and make kind of an edge around the base of the neck, almost like this was a statue head that was broken off or cut off or severed head. That's a much more morbid way to look at this.
I wasn't going to say anything, but now that you
it's not like we're modeling, the spinal column hanging out or anything like that.
I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't insert anything there. Okay, so let's see. We're still on ads, so let's worry a little bit about the jawline here. Now again, exaggerate, overdo it, and then come back in and smooth it out. The other cool thing about working in this way is that you can follow some of the major muscles of the facial areas. So I mean, like the jaw muscles and whatnot. You can bring those in and then smooth them back out. And what you created is going, like the essence of it will stay there, which is a great way to sculpt. Let's go into subtraction, though. Our face is a little bit fat right in here. I can kind of pull this in. I'm looking for more of a gaunt character, or a little more gaunt than we have anyways. So pull some of this in. Bring those cheekbones in a little bit. He's completely lost his chin there, so we won't do that. This is where ZBrush gets fun, though. And this is where you just sit back, turn on some tunes, and just play. Okay, let's play a little bit with the neck while we're at it, though. Let's see, we want that tendon right in there. And we'll smooth that back out. And we'll bring in the Adam's apple. And just smooth all that out. And you can see the point of that sphere kind of playing a little bit into our shape. Mm-hmm. But that's all right. Okay, so certainly coming along. I mean, it's starting to look like a head. Whoa. Careful. Okay, let's see. Now, here's the deal. You'll notice that I haven't changed my surface in that I haven't added any more detail.
Okay,
currently,
so talk about this detail.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sculpt with the detail that came along as a standard, if you will. Wow, that was scary. Here in just a second, what we're going to do is we're going to add some detail to this character so that we have a higher resolution face. As you can imagine, if he just stayed with this level of polygon detail, we wouldn't be able to make anything that was extremely interesting. And this is already kind of cool, but it could be a lot cooler if we could just work a bit more out of it. Now, let's see. A couple more things I just want to take a look at. Maybe pull a little bit back out of the head.
A little bit of the forehead and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I am making no claims that this is going to be anatomically correct to a human being, guys.
No, of course not.
This is a head. Maybe an alien species. That's the old fallback for 3D artists. It's an alien or it's a monster. But this is a training video, so... All right, so let's say that's about as far as we can push that. He's got a really pushed out nose, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's right. Let's see if I can deal with that. We'll subtract some of this stuff out. A little too much there. Be a little more gentle with that. And we'll just start kind of smoothing out the nose strategically. That mirroring along X is doing so much of that work for me. It's great. All right, and we'll add back in some of the nose from here. And we've taken out a lot of that face forward slant that he had there. Yeah, that's coming in a lot better. Okay, good start.
Okay.
Now let's take this and let's add some detail to it. Now here's the trick. What I want to do is I want to come over to Tools. I want to dock this palette over here on the left.
Okay.
Reason is a lot of the things that we're going to be doing to this object require the Tools palette. Why? Because this is not a 3D object. Again, this is a tool. Now currently this is a sphere that has been sculpted. The problem with that is that I have the ability to reinitialize this all the way back to an original sphere.
Okay.
I can lose everything that I've done, and I don't want to be able to do that. Also, there is certain functionality, like the use of Projection Master, which we'll probably be talking about in a later video, that we can't do if we leave this as a quote-unquote sphere.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I'm going to create a polymesh 3D object. And what that does is this recreates our object as a 3D surface.
Okay.
It'll no longer be a sphere, if you will. You can if you're a Maya person, you can think of this like deleting history.
Okay.
So here's what we're going to do. We've just created our 3D sphere. Notice we have a new tool that just appeared, PM3D Sphere 3D Copy 1. Mm-hmm. That is our model. That is everything that we've just been sculpting on, but that PM3D tells you it's now a polymesh 3D object instead of a primitive sphere with some sculpting done to it.
Gotcha.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Edit, turn off Edit, and we're going to clear our canvas at this point. Or let's go to Layer and just click Clear. And now let's grab the PM3D tool, and I'll hold down Shift and drag a copy of it out. Holding down Shift just gave it some orientation.
Okay.
So now we can go into Edit mode. And we have the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look any different at all. The reason that this is important, though, is that now we can go into the geometry menu, and we have some interesting things in here. We can divide this.
Ooh, it just got a lot smoother.
Just got a whole lot smoother. We could divide it again, and it gets smoother still.
Yeah, it does.
And now we can step to different levels of smoothing. So it's like this is where we started. I think I've pushed this about as far as I can. So now I can drag up to level 2 and I can sculpt here.
Okay.
When I'm satisfied with that, I can drag up to level 3. At any time, keep this in mind. You can hold your mouse, just move your mouse over your object, and there's your poly count. Currently, we're sitting at 131,000 polys.
Gotcha.
We can do better. We can push this. Probably on this machine, I wouldn't go much higher than, say, 1.5 million.
Okay.
But it's going to be based on your own computer. Make a judgment call on how your system is responding whenever you hit that divide button. If things start to slow down on you, you can go to, let's say we pop over to level 2. Like, let's just say, for example, 3 was too high. Mm-hmm. We can step down to level 2, and we can click Delete Higher. And now we can only go between level 1 and 2.
Gotcha.
So for now, I'll just leave this at 2. We can subdivide again later, and I can continue sculpting. So we could smooth the face out here. Let's do a little bit of work on that nose. So we'll scale everything up, and we can move our object. You'll notice like there's no place that I can click off the model, so it'd be hard to navigate. I have a little navigation tool over here that I can use to move this guy around. So just kind of drag that around. Now, let's see. We're in subtraction, so we could real carefully kind of carve around there. Start to pull out a nostril. I'm going to give a little more form to the nose itself. And I do have a tendency to kind of get lost in the forest for all the trees here. So if while I'm working, you have any suggestions you want to make?
All right, just go right ahead. Do your thing. At this point, if our audience wants to turn on some music themselves.
Yeah, it may not be a bad idea. Oh, and look at this. We actually have a problem. I'm not mirroring my brush right now.
Ooh.
So we need to undo all the way back to before I actually did any changes and make sure we do re-hit the X key. The reason for that is we brought in a new tool.
Gotcha.
So we have to reestablish that mirroring operation.
Okay, good thing to point out.
So let's get back to what we were doing. We could carve some stuff back in real gently over here. Now, again, I mean, on my end, it's probably going to look a little bit smoother because I have that whole pressure sensitivity advantage. Let's go ahead and start bringing in a lip. Lips always look funny when you first start carving them in. And, here's another good one. If you get lost at some point, you're like, I need to get away from this model, you can just hold down the Alt key and click, and that will kind of frame him up and zoom you out at the same time. So kind of a nice little trick there. Okay, so let's get in a little bit closer, and I'll start up by making my brush just a tad smaller. Let's maybe go to subtraction. Oops, don't want to really do that. Carefully use this to help shape where our mouth is going to go.